celebrates giants for justice, leaders for change.
When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble.
We ain't going back. We've come too far, marched too long, prayed too hard.
You know, we're not going to be here too long, and somebody's got to be able to pick up and take it from here.
Good trouble, necessary trouble.
Say amen.
We can all stand up and make our voices heard if we choose to do so.
Thank you for joining us. Three very unique individuals bonded by a common cause. Their unwavering commitment put them in a class all by themselves. And tonight, we pay tribute to the men behind the movement.
We lost all three of these great leaders just this year. Reverend Joseph Lowry passed away in March at 98. Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian, he was 95 when he took his eternal rest Friday morning. And Congressman John Lewis, the conscience of Congress, took his last breath at 80 years old Friday night. And we will miss all of them.
That's right. What bonded them was a burning desire to change the world, to make an impact on the lives of the oppressed, bring hope to future generations. Each one played a pivotal role in changing America. And for that, we are eternally grateful. We want you to hear their stories and get an inside look at their lives and their loves and their hurt. Today, Georgia paid tribute to the Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian. Governor Brian Kemp welcoming the Vivian family into the state capitol rotunda this afternoon and escorted them to where Dr. Vivian's body lied in state. An honor given to a person of national importance in a public place before the burial. The civil rights legend's final fight for freedom and his life ended in the early morning hours of July 17th, just days short of his 96th birthday. For those who knew C.T. Vivian, he was a civil rights hero, an intellectual force, and architect within the movement.
It was nonviolent direct action that made it possible for us to win. We didn't win simply because we stood up. We stood up because we had a strategy upon which we could stand up without being killed. All right?
With his passing, a younger generation is now introduced to his legacy, parts of which mirror their own uprising against police brutality and racial injustice.
A couple of groups are doing right now in the street we have done before.
He will probably be bigger in death than in life.
Dr. Gerald Durley was Vivian's pastor for 20 years and his friend for nearly 60. Durley will deliver Vivian's eulogy at Providence Missionary Baptist Church, where Vivian was a member and would occasionally preach himself. Close friend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called Vivian one of the greatest preachers to ever live.
Remember, in the civil rights movement, those that were at the heart of it and the strength were pastors. So the power of the message was always grounded from a faith base. And C.T. was a well-read, well-educated person who knew how to, we call it, exegete the text. Pull it all out of the text.
By the time Vivian connected with King in the mid-50s, he had already staged sit-ins in segregated restaurants in Illinois where he was raised.
It is really good to be back with SCLC.
Vivian served as the National Director of Affiliates for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, training members in nonviolent strategies and leading protests across the South.
C.T. Vivian helped do the groundwork.
SCLC veteran Tyrone Brooks said Vivian was a quiet warrior, preferring the shadows over the limelight.
C.T. Vivian is one of those unsung heroes. He is just as great in being unknown as those who are well known.
Vivian had been arrested, nearly killed, but never backed down from confrontation. His most famous one, televised outside a Dallas County courthouse in Alabama, where Vivian was trying to register black voters. Sheriff Jim Clark's punch knocked him to the ground.
And C.T. kept coming back. He wouldn't stop. He kept coming back. He was saying to the sheriff, you may kill me, but I'm going to continue to work until you kill me to make it possible for my brothers and sisters to vote.
This is the best father anybody could ask for.
Vivian's commitment to the movement was a sacrifice, according to his daughter, Denise.
He may not have been here a lot, but the values he left, were always there.
He was married to Octavia Jeans for 58 years, who he affectionately called the wife. A prolific reader, masterful storyteller, Vivian amassed a collection of art and books that would be featured in the Peace Column Museum to be built in Vine City.
He and Mom spent 30 years just getting in the car and driving from bookstore to bookstore all over the country.
Octavia died in 2011. That same year, Vivian and his son Al, who are both members of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, traveled to Washington, D.C. for the dedication of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. His signature smile, infectious laugh, and quick-witted humor will be missed.
Oh, he loves puns.
Oh, that's it.
Oh my goodness, he loves puns.
He creates them, so if you say something, he'll find a pun.
Yeah. Tell us a pun. Upon what subject? I mean, it's always a pun. He's that's corny, loves puns. Yeah.
Al said his father's legacy is about humility.
That it was not about him, it was about everybody else.
And a fighting spirit that never ceased.
Knowing, what he did with the movement, you just knew that, there was no reason, there's no excuse not to go for everything, because he helped make a way where there was no way.
And somebody's got to be able to pick up and take it from here.
And tomorrow morning, his private funeral is being held at Providence Missionary Baptist Church in Atlanta. It will be live streamed right here on CBS 46 at 11 a.m.
John Lewis, a civil rights hero and an icon. The longtime congressman from Atlanta lost his fight with pancreatic cancer. CBS 46 special assignment reporter Sally Sears found two important friends with true insight about the beloved Georgia congressman who touched thousands of lives.
John Lewis's fight for racial equality came to him early. Born in 1940 to sharecroppers on a farm outside Troy, Alabama. His first schooling was segregated.
I think this is just the challenge he has had all of his life. To survive in Troy was as rough as cancer.
The teenaged Lewis heard Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s voice over the radio, calling African Americans to join the Montgomery bus boycott.
John called Martin Luther King, and Martin sent him a bus ticket to come to Montgomery.
We the Negro citizen of Dallas County.
Lewis absorbed the philosophy of nonviolence from King himself. Soon he was paying a brutal physical price. Sit-ins at lunch counters, freedom rides integrating interstate buses. Lewis was the first freedom rider to be assaulted.
If you ever take pictures of see John Lewis in any of the freedom rides, you keep your head down, even though someone's beating on you and you're bloody, not to respond.
Nonviolence made the world watch. Peaceful demonstrations led to planning a march on Washington. 50 years later, Lewis enjoyed remembering.
We had a meeting with President Kennedy in the Oval Office of the White House. And he said, if you bring all these people to Washington, won't there be violence and chaos and disorder? And Mr. President, this will be an orderly, peaceful, nonviolent protest. And we saw a sea of humanity on the move coming from Union Station. And we knew then it was going to be more than 50 or 60,000 people. I just smiled to myself. And I said, this is it. An important day, but I didn't know it would have such an impact for so many years to come.
2 years later, those nonviolent protests met Alabama violence on a famous bridge in Selma.
I thought I was going to die on this bridge.
50 years later, he returned to Selma with CBS 46's Tracy Hutchins to reflect.
We had to change Selma. Selma was a symbol of the worst of oppression. We line up in twos and start walking. We come to the highest point on the bridge. Down below we saw a sea of blue. Alabama state troopers. We came within hearing distance of the state troopers. A man spoke up and said, disperse, return to your homes or to your church. This march will not be allowed to continue. And Jose Williams said, Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray. And the major said on his bullhorn, "Troopers, advance."
Advance toward the group.
You're walking through the valley of shadow of death. But he's done that all his life.
The Selma scars united a fragmenting civil rights movement.
SNCC and SCLC tended to be divided. He helped pull us together.
But John Lewis was always an integrationist.
Black power was something that John never really immersed himself in. White people and black people working together for social justice and change. Stokely got quite a few people on the SNCC staff to stay with his more militant philosophy, and John was actually voted out as chairman of SNCC.
Convinced that the future was at the ballot box, Lewis registered black voters.
He probably registered 3 million black folks around the country.
And he met and married Lillian Miles.
I think one of the disappointing things in life for John was that they couldn't have children, so they adopted John Miles.
In 1986, John Lewis was sitting on the Atlanta City Council when a seat in the U.S. Congress opened. He ran for it. 3 decades representing Atlanta, and his liberal voice never changed. Support for food stamps, for Obamacare, for gun control, and always for nonviolence.
The only thing I would say to the people protesting, whatever you do it in a peaceful, orderly, nonviolent fashion.
As long as he has life and breath, he will be there in the Congress casting his votes.
Coming up next, the third pioneer we said goodbye to this year after he gave so much for the struggle, the Reverend Joseph A. Lowery.
Lowery would grab your attention with his charisma.
More on the dean of the civil rights movement after the break.
Devices are like doorways that could allow hackers into your home. And like all doors, they're safer when locked. That's why you need Xfinity XFi. With the XFi Gateway, devices connected to your home's Wi-Fi are protected, which helps keep people outside from accessing your passwords, credit cards, and cameras, and people inside from accidentally visiting sites that aren't secure. And if someone tries, we'll let you know. XFi Advanced Security. If it's connected, it's protected. Get Xfinity Internet and ask how to upgrade your in-home Wi-Fi. Switch today.
Sell your house to Homevestors, your local We Buy Ugly Houses people with over 20 years experience. Some of these startup home buyers haven't been in business 20 minutes. Our know-how means we'll close as promised. Homevestors, America's #1 cash home buyer at WeBuyUglyHouses.com.
What you're about to see is the best part of my job. Remember when the insurance company offered you $15,000?
Yeah.
What do you think they are now?
30, 60, 150?
$500,000.
Ken, you're the man.
One call, that's all. Our job is to maximize the value of your case.
Call 1-800-CALL-KEN.
Checkers Chicken Bites and Fries box is just $2.49. Enjoy the all-white meat chicken and famous seasoned fries wherever you go. On a walk, around the block, on a dock. Checkers Chicken Bites and Fries box deal is just $2.49. Get Checkers delivered.
It's staggering. More than 100,000 Georgians have gotten the coronavirus, and as cases continue to rise, the big drug companies take advantage, raising prices in the middle of a pandemic. But in Washington, David Perdue voted against cracking down on the drug companies' price gouging and ripping us off. While we suffer, David Perdue's voted with Big Pharma, failing to hold the drug companies accountable. Tell David Perdue to look out for us.
Welcome back. It was just 4 months ago when we said goodbye to another giant for justice. Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowery died at the age of 98 on March 27th. In my 30 years in Atlanta television, few have touched my soul like Reverend Lowery, from his dogged determination to his compassion for justice for all. He was like an Atlanta father to me and many of my fellow journalists. I smile as I remember my last visit with him. I cry as I share what his life has meant to so many.
We've made progress in race, but we still got a terrible long way to go.
Even in his 90s, Reverend Joseph Eccles Lowery's dedication to civil and human rights never faded.
We ain't going back. We've come too far, marched too long, prayed too hard.
Affectionately hailed the dean of the civil rights movement, Lowry played an instrumental role in pivotal moments of our nation's history, from helping lay the groundwork to our civil rights movement to delivering the benediction at the inauguration of the country's first black president.
Say amen. Say amen and amen.
He should be welcomed in heaven.
Lowry died at 98, peacefully at his home, surrounded by his 3 daughters. In 2001, Clark Atlanta University established the Joseph and Evelyn Lowry Institute. Ambassador Andrew Young, who fought and marched alongside Lowry, said his friend of 60 years showed unflinching courage in helping shape a new South.
He has been in situations in Alabama where they shot through the back of his car.
Alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Lowry co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the backbone of the movement which advocated for nonviolence. He would go on to serve as chairman, vice president, and president of the SCLC, a role he served for 20 years.
It's a challenge we've not met in finding a way to bring the races to a new level of respect and understanding. But we've got to do it.
His wife Evelyn died in 2013. The couple was married for 67 years. An ordained minister, Lowry became pastor of Cascade United Methodist Church in the mid-'80s.
He will be truly missed.
Senior pastor Dr. Kevin Muriel said Lowry's preaching style was unmatched.
Dr. Lowry could take any scripture that he ever preached, and he could make it relevant to where you were in the current context in your own personal life, but he always tied it back into what was happening in our culture.
And Lowry continued his dedication to activism even after the Civil Rights Act passed. He went on to protest South African apartheid in the 70s, denounced the Iraq War in 2006, and advocated for marriage equality in 2012.
A former UN ambassador and former Atlanta Mayor Andrew Young is one of the last living prominent figures in the movement. He has become the keeper of ensuring their memories stay alive. Young said Reverend Joseph Lowry always stood as a voice for those that society pushed out. The men, they had been friends for more than 6 decades, and their wives and children, they were all so close. They marched together and worked with every presidential administration since President Kennedy to bring about change.
Our idea was that we have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And he was representing the interest of the least of these God's children. So whoever was in power, he tried to be the voice of the poor, and he tried to lift up the concerns of the needy. Black, white, gay, straight, rich, poor, but mostly poor, because it was the poor that were not getting a fair share.
Young said many of us still benefit from Lowry's influence today and are able to live better lives because he sacrificed much of his own life for the betterment of the nation. Walking the walk and talking the talk. That is how many will remember Georgia Representative John Lewis. His hero wall, a mural of the icon, sits in the heart of his district. CBS's Michelle Miller spoke with those who knew him well and those who barely knew him but were inspired by the life he lived.
A stream of admirers of all races and backgrounds unified here in the shadow of the late John Lewis. Those who knew him best say it's his humanity and compassion that set him apart. Activist Ernona Clayton was a decades-long friend of both Lewis and his wife of almost 45 years, Lillian.
Oh, I put them together.
You set Lillian and John up?
Yeah, oh yeah. Married them all, just married them all. Over Lillian's objection. And then I said to John just for recent years, I said, John, you know, come to think, I don't think you ever said yes or no. He said, you didn't give me a chance.
Rosa Tyner is John Lewis's sister, the youngest of 10 children.
I was very small when I used to see him on TV. At first I wondered why he was getting arrested. From his birth on to his death, he was still standing up for what's right.
Congressman Lewis is the reason
that I ran for office.
Councilman Khalid Kamal represents Atlanta's Twin City, South Fulton.
When you see a scene like this, what comes to your mind?
That this man just had an effect on generations of people, particularly black folks.
Michelle Miller, CBS News, Atlanta.
From the highest honors to the most lighthearted moments, we have much more on Georgia's Giants.
If you've been injured, your pain and bills haven't stopped, and neither will we. Get the help you need today without leaving home. Get the strong arm, attorney John Foy and Associates. For your free case evaluation, call, text, chat, or go online to johnfoy.com. We're here, we're open, and we're ready to fight and win for you today, just as we've always been. That's the strong arm. Call attorney John Foy and Associates right now.
Right now at Rooms to Go. This is it. Time to save. Time to improve the way you sleep. Just choose your perfect mattress set from our big selection of top brands and switch your foundation to this adjustable base for free, king or queen size. And check out our amazing selection of mattress buys throughout the store. Save on Sealy, Serta, Beautyrest, Therapeutic, and more. There's something for everyone. So find your perfect mattress now at Rooms to Go.
Nervous about making big purchases? I get it. Most companies claim to offer warranties, but guess who's in charge if something goes wrong? They are. With Trustdale, you'll never risk your spend again, because every company I recommend meets my 7-point standard and honors my $10,000 Make It Right guarantee, which puts me in charge of getting you results. So you can take your chances with pages of warranty mice type or trust me to make it right. Never risk your spend again with Trustdale.
He's fought for justice and equality like all the other civil rights people. But you don't hear a lot of noise about him. He doesn't make a lot of fuss. He doesn't put himself on a pedestal. And yet he's in the field doing all of the hard work. So he's just a humble individual. He's just the most generous person that I've ever met.
It is one of the highest honors for an American citizen, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. In 2011, President Obama presented John Lewis with the award for his lifetime of work in the civil rights movement. And just 2 years after, another civil rights leader was given the same honor. C.T. Vivian received his Medal of Freedom in 2013. Their stories will never be forgotten. CBS 46's Alicia Roberts introduces us to a man who made it his mission to capture their legacies.
It was a special relationship. We were really honored to be a part of it.
Donald Bermudez had been working with the now late Congressman John Lewis for more than 15 years. Initially, the two met to curate art for the King Center, then for the civil rights icon's milestone 65th and 75th birthdays.
I said, you want to have a recent picture or a young picture? He said, I want a young picture. I want to show when I was vibrant. I said, all right. So we created the one behind us.
Bermudez was also part of the team that created this iconic photo in 2013, capturing 5 Medal of Honor winners, including Lewis, C.T. Vivian, Joseph Lowry, Andrew Young, and Hank Aaron. Bermudez recalling Lewis's down-to-earth way.
When we did this photo shoot, and I said, what would you like to eat for the diet? He's like, I just want a regular tuna sandwich with regular bread, nothing special.
It seems, despite his tireless fight for social justice, the congressman liked his personal things more simple.
He had a flip phone, so he couldn't. They gave him an iPhone and he didn't like it, so he went back to the flip phone.
Something echoed in his personality.
When somebody is that big in spirit or in all the accolades, you expect him to have a different personality. He wasn't like that.
It's what Bermudez will cherish most about Congressman Lewis, along with his push for the greater cause.
And no matter what you thought your problem was, obviously he was on the Hill fighting for bigger problems.
Bermudez says the congressman never forgot a face he met, and he knows heaven just got some really good trouble. Alicia Roberts, CBS 46 News.
And one of Reverend Lowry's lasting imprints is the influence he and his wife Evelyn had on getting the National Center for Civil and Human Rights built. The center has become a global attraction in the heart of Atlanta's downtown. The center CEO, Jill Savitt, says the Lowrys, along with former UN Ambassador Andrew Young, imagined that would not only document the movement, but educate visitors on how it was carried out.
Reverend Lowry really makes this place a legacy museum. It was because of Reverend Lowry that his wife, Evelyn Lowry, said, we have to have a place in Atlanta that honors these icons and what they did, but most important, the way they did it, because it has lessons for us today. It can teach us.
After much pushing and a lot of fundraising, ground broke on the museum in 2012. And today, 3 giants, Lowry, Lewis, and Vivian, are featured.
Well, these Georgia-based freedom fighters were serious about the movement, certainly, but they also had a bit of a fun side. Well, Congressman John Lewis was a dancing machine, and he especially liked Pharrell's song Happy. Here he is dancing at a rally. This is back in 2018 for then gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. And Karen, you were actually there at the time, weren't you?
I was sitting in my seat, and you know what? We were waiting for Oprah, Lady O, to come out to, she was going to question Stacey Abrams. And so there was all this lull. Congressman Lewis got up. They played that song. That was it. The whole room lit up.
Right. I love seeing this because it's been, of course, tweeted and retweeted and gone viral on social. This just makes me smile to see him so happy like that. And I adore his dance moves, too.
Oh, yeah. He's got some clean moves there. And who could forget that iconic smile of Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian? Look at that. It was his signature. Never upset, never discouraged, always a kind word for anyone, and great advice when he saw you. He would brighten up a room with that smile and make you feel like you were as important and as remarkable as he was.
Yeah, I wish I had the opportunity to meet him. And the birthday celebrations for Dr. Lowry were nothing short of a star-studded affair from his 90th and beyond. We were there each year for all the bells and whistles. Lowry was known as a bit of a jokester, and he loved a good time too. He was humbled and thankful for the attention each and every year.
Oh yeah, what a birthday celebration it was. Well, stay with us. Up next, a look back at the speech that woke up America.
How a 23-year-old stood before thousands and dared to say what many at that time did not want to hear. More of this incredible legacy after the break.
We are the beneficiaries of their lives, and I'm happy to celebrate them in their absence.
If I only had one message, it would be this. All law firms are not the same. Some can, some just can't. There's only one Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
The mother's standard of care. It's how we care for our cancer patients like Cecil. When his lung cancer spread, Cecil came to CTCA. Having multiple experts all in one location allowed Cecil's team to work together to immediately create a personalized treatment plan. Today, Cecil has a boost in strength and a future, together with his son. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Appointments available now.
Without you, our team at Mungie & Associates would not exist.
We are not asking you to be a client.
We're asking you to be good to others.
To stand together.
As a unified nation.
To see that we are all one.
Lily, everyone in the house is online and I can't get enough bandwidth to video chat with my book club.
Try 1 gig internet with AT&T Fiber. You get more bandwidth and HBO Max included, so everyone stays entertained.
So I can just watch the show instead of reading the book?
You know, if you turn on your subtitles, that's almost reading.
Get entertainment grade 1 gig internet with AT&T Fiber. Now with HBO Max included. Bundle with AT&T TV for $89.98 a month for a year. Limited availability in select areas. Call 1-877 only ATT.
The all-new CBS46 app. Live, local, free.
CBS46 celebrates Giants for Justice, Leaders for Change.
C.T. Vivian is one of those unsung heroes. He is just as great in being unknown as those who are well known.
Yes, he was. Welcome back. For civil rights trailblazer Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian, education transcended books and even the classroom. He said access to learning, particularly for African Americans, was a liberation from negative circumstances, a means to mobility.
We struggled with and fought the battles and won them across this nation.
For civil rights trailblazer Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian, education transcended the books and even the classroom. He said access to learning, particularly for African Americans, meant liberation from negative circumstances, a means to mobility.
We are to change the world we live in. That's what that strategy means. It means that we're not just to change black people or the black condition. We can all stand up in the street and make our voices heard.
That same intellect Vivian poured into strategizing and training students in the movement. He used to develop education and community programs that continue to impact hundreds of thousands of people across this nation.
He uses education as a particular kind of vehicle to empower people.
In the mid-'60s, he created Vision, an academic program that sent more than 700 Alabama students to college on scholarships. Vision would become the precursor to Upward Bound, a federally funded college prep program for low-income students.
I'm a product of Vision, of what C.T. Vivian had started.
Justin Walker, a student of the program, is currently an Upward Bound specialist in Mobile, Alabama.
I'm definitely going to be pushing it to share his legacy.
A graduate of the University of South Alabama, Walker says it's an injustice that Reverend C.T. Vivian doesn't receive more credit for his contributions.
He went through so much and he had no fear. And you have some students who think that, college may not be for them. Well, you should not fear college. You should not fear, bettering your, furthering your education.
Vivian's pursuit of lifelong learning was encouraged by his mother and grandmother. He attended Western Illinois University in Macomb and studied theology at the American Baptist College alongside Georgia Congressman John Lewis. Atlanta civil rights historian and scholar Dr. Maurice Hobson.
That's what's beautiful about it, is that he planted a seed that would, in many ways, bless generations to come.
But it's the C.T. Vivian Leadership Institute that carries out Vivian's dream of building diverse and viable communities throughout Metro Atlanta.
He designed it to create a lifelong learning atmosphere.
Program director Vanetta Perry has been with the C.T. Vivian Leadership Institute since it was founded 12 years ago.
His biggest thing has always been he wants this exposure. It's about exposure and putting things in front of our young people and making sure that they're going to be equipped to be leaders, educators, business owners, and active, positive community participants.
The Institute provides programs in faith, personal, economic, and educational development, including inmate reentry resources and pairing teenage boys with positive role models.
His desire is truly to impact humanity as a whole. And that, I think, if we all could think that way, the world would be a different place.
But just as Vivian was a man of determination, so is the staff.
The desire is to create ongoing fundraising activities, donations, partnerships that will help us continue this legacy of Dr. Vivian and us find a permanent home in one of the many underserved communities in Atlanta.
Well, as a freedom rider and a congressman, John Lewis spent his life fighting for equality. But it was the speech that he gave at the 1963 March on Washington that gained him national attention. Here's CBS's Nora O'Donnell.
We must say, wake up, America, wake up, for we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient.
It was the day that Americans remember for Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. But it was the youngest speaker, John Lewis, who is remembered for giving the most fiery address.
But we want to be free now.
At age 23, Lewis had already been arrested for leading sit-ins to integrate whites-only lunch counters. Organizers were worried about his references in a speech to revolution and violence.
My friends, let us not forget that we are involved in a serious social revolution.
Lewis planned to rally the crowd to march through the South the way Sherman did and burn Jim Crow to the ground nonviolently. Instead, he said this.
But we will march with the spirit we have shown here today.
Hundreds of thousands listened to him that August day at the Lincoln Memorial. Almost 60 years later, and just a mile away, he would use his last public appearance to walk a D.C. street renamed Black Lives Matter Plaza.
Very moving, very impressive.
But while honoring George Floyd and others, his words from the 1960s still today resonate loudly for America.
We are tired. We are tired of being beaten by policemen. And then you holler, be patient. How long can we be patient?
You don't have to share, but it'd be a lot cooler if you did. The new Zax's Pack for 2 with 8 chicken fingers, double the fries, 2 drinks, and that world-famous Zax sauce. Twice the flavor for just $14.99, only at Zaxby's. Try it with fried pickles for a limited time.
America, we want to help get you back to it. And here's how, with the Ford Promise. Visit your Ford dealer, finance a new, certified pre-owned or used vehicle through Ford Credit, and if you lose your job, you can return it for up to 1 year from the day you bought it. You can also get 0% APR financing for 72 months across the Ford lineup. Let us help get you back to it with the Ford Promise.
Me and my daughter were hit by a big truck. We had a big-time case and needed a big-time lawyer. So I called the Ken Nugent Law Firm.
Everything we do is big time. I've got a big-time staff, we handle big-time cases, and we get big-time results.
The Ken Nugent Law Firm got us a big-time settlement of $900,000.
Our job is to maximize the value of your case. Big case or small, one call, that's all.
Call 1-800-CALL-KEN.
Have a brand or business you need to promote? For over 50 years, M&I Targeted Media has made sure our client's message hits the right customers. Whether you're local, regional, or national, go to mni.com. Successful ad campaigns start here.
With Herzing University's Everywhere Classroom, you can earn a degree in today's hottest fields online. For a limited time, we'll waive your enrollment fee. See what your career can turn into. Call or click today.
If they've had it with you, this'll help. The new Zax's Pack for 2 with 8 chicken fingers, double the fries, 2 drinks, and that world-famous Zax sauce. Twice the flavor for just $14.99, only at Zaxby's. Try it with fried pickles for a limited time.
You've got to understand that in all 3 of these men, the essence of what gave them strength was not just the spiritual power of God, but we got to understand that, first of all, they were human and they had good women in their lives. Octavia and Lillian, Evelyn, these were strong women that took care of those kids. So often we talk about the men who were up there in the front, but when they came home and all the fears that seemingly were suppressing their mind, they had somebody there to stay with them.
Well, you've heard the saying, behind every great man is a great woman. And that rang true for the foot soldiers of the Civil Rights Movement. Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry preceded in death by the love of his life, Evelyn Lowry, who made her own history as an activist before her death in 2013 at the age of 88.
I've never heard her say bad words about anyone, even when people have wronged her. She was generous in spirit.
When and if she was ever so slightly behind him, that is exactly where she meant to be. Not as his shadow, but as his shield, making it perfectly clear that to get to him, you had to go through her.
She sure did. And although her husband is more widely praised for his role in the civil rights movement, those who knew the couple say neither could have accomplished what they did without the other.
C.T. Vivian and Octavia were inseparable. He will tell you today that that was the heart and the strength of my life.
C.T. Vivian's wife, Octavia, also took an active role in the civil rights movement. She led the charge in desegregating the DeKalb County School District. She maintained a detailed record of the civil rights movement and the work of the SCLC, and went on to write Coretta Scott King's biography. She helped establish the King Center, worked public relations at Morris Brown College, and traveled with her husband until the end of her life in 2011. Lillian Miles Lewis was more than just John Lewis's wife. When they met, she had already enjoyed a career in politics. She was his advisor, his confidant, and the reason he ran for Congress. The Lewis family lost Lillian to an illness in 2012.
She was a true intellect with a keen interest in world affairs.
If you want to know how loved Lillian Miles Lewis was,
Lillian had a strong moral compass, and she followed it wherever it took her.
just listen to how her friends and family describe her.
Lillian is in the tradition of those who fought to bring down walls and build bridges for all people, and so the world celebrates this peace-loving, freedom-fighting woman.
What endured Lillian Lewis to so many, her love and commitment to her family, and the fact that she never sought the limelight.
During these last few days, upon her passing, people mentioned that everyone knew the congressman, but they did not know his wife. That's simply because Lillian was in the background making things work. Lillian was about doing, not showing.
Dignitaries from across the country came to pay their respects to Lillian Lewis, the wife of Congressman John Lewis, a woman who touched a cross-section of people.
Congressman Lewis, I bring you the heartfelt condolences of the American Jewish Committee and the entire Jewish community.
It wasn't a sad occasion, but rather a celebration of a woman who was truly the backbone of a civil rights giant.
Lillian is in heaven, and she's going to talk to Martin Luther King, and she's going to talk to Coretta Scott King. And I know that Lillian Lewis is going to make time to talk to Irma and Albert Hill as well, because that's Lillian.
And now she's with her husband. Well, still ahead, the nation mourns the loss of the man known as the conscience of Congress, but his legacy will live on in the hearts and minds of the next generation.
To watch Congressman Lewis interact with young people, there was never a time when I saw him pass by a group of young people that he didn't stop and engage with them, encouraging them to take their rightful place, talking about the things that he had done.
Shop the Rooms to Go store-wide sofa sale going on now. Get big savings and endless sofa possibilities. Every Rooms to Go sofa is on sale. Save on fabric sofas, plush leather sofas, reclining sofas, sleeper sofas, and sectionals. Every sofa you see is priced low to sell fast. And only Rooms to Go offers an opportunity like this. So shop the Rooms to Go store-wide sofa sale going on now. Every sofa is on sale.
We've never been so ready for summer. Your Honda dealer is open and ready to get you into a new Honda today. Like the sporty Civic or the sophisticated Accord. Visit the Honda Summer Clearance Event and get a great deal from Honda, KBB.com's 2020 Best Value Brand. Get a great deal on the Accord at the Honda Summer Clearance Event today.
Madam Speaker, I ask that all members rise for a moment of silence in remembrance of the Honorable John Robert Lewis.
The House of Representatives held a moment of silence for the late Congressman John Lewis. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi asked everyone to stand in silence on the House floor Monday morning. The emotional moment was followed by a round of applause for Lewis. Speaker Pelosi says House Democrats are planning a memorial for later this week. Mourners draped a black cloth and left written messages on the congressional office door of the late Georgia Democratic representative in the Cannon House office building on Capitol Hill.
John Lewis always would counsel us, counsel young people, counsel others to never give up, never give in, never give out. Keep the faith, keep our eyes on the prize, and continue the country's long, necessary, and majestic march toward a more perfect union. That is what we will continue to do as House Democrats in his honor.
Well, these great men are not only memorialized by the books and artifacts they leave behind, but also by the memories they shared. Each year, Congressman Lewis marked the years since Bloody Sunday by marching across Selma's Edmund Pettus Bridge with the next generation of voters and activists. Yolanda King, the 12-year-old granddaughter of Martin Luther King Jr., notes the impact that Lewis had on the people who joined him in Selma year after year.
the congressman is always down there. You know, he's always welcoming, and he's just always encouraging young people, and he's really inspirational. He has interesting stories. And it's like sometimes his stories like inspire you to take action. Some of his stories are what have inspired me. With him is an experience.
Yeah, so young, but still getting so much from the late congressman. John Lewis was called to a life of public service as a teenager. From his activism with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to freedom rides, Lewis learned a reputation. He earned one as a warrior for equal rights. But it wasn't until his march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge that not only made him a household name, but showed his sacrifice for the cause.
The evening after Congressman John Lewis took his final breath, dozens made the trip to Selma, following in his footsteps across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. For Shawana Pierce, it's a walk through history.
It paved the way for me to even be here.
Each step serving as a reminder of the blood and tears that have stained the historic landmark. It's where we came to know the congressman, the place where he was brutally beaten, suffering a skull fracture, all in the name of freedom and the right to vote.
To be here to show homage that I'm not taking the sacrifice for granted, that I'm grateful, I'm thankful for every drop of blood that was shed on this bridge.
Such a strong force for all of the African Americans from the 60s on, but even recently he's always been outspoken and spoke truth.
Lewis's unwavering strength is what fuels Pierce to keep fighting.
More of us to take that torch and fight in what we need to do in this time to continue to bring the peace, to bring racial equality.
And remember the man who marched with might.
John Lewis represents history, my history.
Brittany Miller, CBS 46 News.
One of the most important things that I recognized about him is his house is a museum. It's a museum. And when I went in there the first time, I just wanted to go everywhere and look. And he let me.
That was Bunny Jackson Ransom, former first wife of Atlanta's first black mayor, Maynard Jackson, who, like many of C.T. Vivian's friends, describe his Atlanta home as a haven of history, particularly his library of more than 6,000 books. That library is being preserved for a new museum planned for Vine City.
Dr. Vivian came to me back in the latter part of 1990s. So he asked me one day, George, I need your help. I need for you to take over the efforts in terms of building this library for my legacy. Sure, how can you say no to Dr. C.T. Vivian? As a matter of fact, I don't know if anybody ever has said no. We have found an institution by the name of the National Monument Museum to really come in and agree to build a museum to house these books as well as the other items that is attributed to Dr. Vivian and his legacy. And we are well on the way with that program. Funding is being put in place from the National Museum.
And we'll, of course, keep you posted. Now, Atlanta Braves superstar Hank Aaron and his own struggles during the civil rights era are documented. He and his wife, Billy, reflect on the relationships they shared with Congressman Lewis and Reverend C.T. Vivian.
You talk to Vivian and you think that you know him. I'm not talking about harsh, but he knew everything. He knew everything, and he didn't raise sand. He was a very quiet man, and I learned to appreciate him. Oh, the greatest person in the world, I mean, really.
I just felt that it was his destiny. He was destined to become the kind of human being that he was. It just does my heart good to know that I knew him. I can claim him as a friend. I will always admire and love C.T. Vivian. And John, he was big and thoughtful when it comes to being a good leader.
He and I grew up in a segregated city in Alabama, both of us. Only he carried his a lot further than I carried mine. All of the things that he went through, all of the things that he did, he was a giant. He was strictly a giant.
We will miss his voice. We will miss his presence.
Without these guys, I don't think we would be where we are today.
Make sure you give your life in service to others, to your fellow man, so that when you pass on, you will leave footprints that are too large to fill.
Great advice from Mrs. Billy Aaron. Well, known as the Dean of the Civil Rights Movement, Reverend Dr. Joseph E. Lowery contributed significantly to the movement and continued a life of public service well after. Born in Huntsville, Alabama in 1921, and he began his fight for justice early on. He first became a pastor, then shortly after got involved in the civil rights movement. In 1955, he helped lead the Montgomery bus boycott after Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white person. And by 1957, he had joined forces with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where they co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Well into his 90s, Dr. Lowery remained steadfast in his activism.
So we've come here today to declare that we ain't gonna let nobody take away our vote.
Throughout the rest of his life, he worked as the head of the SCLC and aided countless groups across the U.S. in their fight for freedom.
It's staggering. More than 100,000 Georgians have gotten the coronavirus, and as cases continue to rise, the big drug companies take advantage, raising prices in the middle of a pandemic. But in Washington, David Perdue voted against cracking down on the drug companies' price gouging and ripping us off. While we suffer, David Perdue's voted with Big Pharma, failing to hold the drug companies accountable. Tell David Perdue to look out for us.
Businesses are starting to bounce back. But what if you could do better than that? Like adapt, discover, deliver in new ways to new customers. What if you could come back stronger, faster, better? At Comcast Business, we want to help you not just bounce back, but bounce forward. And now we're committed to helping you do just that with powerful and reliable internet and voice solutions for a great price when you buy both. Call or go online today.
America, we want to help get you back to it. And here's how, with the Ford Promise. Visit your Ford dealer, finance a new, certified pre-owned or used vehicle through Ford Credit, and if you lose your job, you can return it for up to 1 year from the day you bought it. You can also get 0% APR financing for 72 months across the Ford lineup. Let us help get you back to it with the Ford Promise.
Former Ambassador Andrew Young says the flames ignited by these iconic leaders will always shine bright, and the sacrifices they made to create a new South continue to shape the nation and influence the world.
It's not only the memories, it's that I hardly ever speak without quoting something I heard from them 40, 50 years ago that still resonates and helps keep me going. Ultimately, we are spiritual beings. And while this physical part will come to an end, we will continue to live in the Spirit. And that's what the true reality of our lives is.
Now, we could have spent an entire hour telling each one of their stories. They've all left behind such an incredible legacy. Well, the Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowery, the Dean of the Civil Rights Movement, left this earth quietly right before the heart of the pandemic. There was no public memorial or funeral, so we felt compelled to honor him tonight. He meant so much to so many.
Yes, he did. And smiling C.T. Vivian, the quiet giant, with the patience and virtue of a saint, but a fire inside that propelled him to stand up for change, pushing everyone to get out and vote.
And the conscience of Congress and the heart of Atlanta, Congressman John Lewis had a larger-than-life personality and the ability to galvanize a nation. His powerful voice and presence will live on for years to come.
Good trouble is what he liked, and many of you wanted to pay your respects to Congressman John Lewis because he represented Georgia's 5th Congressional District for more than 30 years. Folks in the community felt like they knew him personally, so we created some cards and we set them out right next to that big mural of him on Auburn Avenue. And so far, hundreds of you have signed the cards. We've got 2 of them now, and we're going to present them to his family. 3 amazing men, 3 amazing legacies, Tracy, who just will definitely be missed.
Yeah, we will miss their voices, their presence, the way they really encouraged us all to keep moving forward no matter what the obstacles were.
And for all that they gave us all over the country, we'd like to say thank you. And we'd like to thank you for joining us as we celebrated our Giants for Justice, Leaders for Change.
You probably would never believe it, but the boy from Troy will become the embodiment of nonviolence in America.
We must say, wake up, America, wake up!
A cell phone distraction here, a bad start to the day. Here, the results can be devastating.
Distracted drivers care more